Who really killed the reporter who was digging up dirt on Bruce's parents? Who really killed Bruce's parents? Why were Bruce's parents assassinated but not him? Why did Alfred have the scar? What did Alfred mean when he mentioned his days in the circus? Why did the Waynes hire Alfred? Who built the Batcave? Who created those drops and how? How did Carmine become the king of Gotham's criminal empire and not Salvatore Maroni? Who might the Riddler really be? And who might the reporter Edward Elliot really be? Who was that guy on the bench? And at the end of this video, I'll also ask two really good questions that I haven't heard anyone else ask, and I can't find answers for them. Hopefully they'll be covered in an upcoming sequel. Before we jump into the questions, we need to briefly review some historical events that occurred in Gotham before the movie begins. The Riddler said that 20 years ago, a reporter set out for the truth, and he was digging up dirt on Bruce's parents during Thomas Wayne's mayoral campaign. Kinsey tells Bruce, Gordon, and Selina that Carmine has been the mayor for the last 20 years. So something pivotal happened in Gotham 20 years prior, the Gotham Renewal Fund. We see a recording of Thomas Wayne stating that there would be a Gotham Renewal Fund whether he won or lost the election. And Kinsey tells us that the Gotham Renewal Fund had no oversight. This had the mobsters' mouths watering. Now on to the questions. Number 1. Who really hired and killed the reporter who was investigating Thomas Wayne? Carmine tells Bruce that the reporter, Edward Elliot, was on Maroni's payroll. Carmine tells Bruce that Maroni didn't like the history that Carmine and Thomas Wayne shared, which is the Long Halloween's version of events that Thomas Wayne performed surgery to save Carmine's life after he'd been shot. Carmine's implication is that Maroni didn't want Thomas Wayne to become mayor because that would give his rival Carmine too much power over Gotham. So, according to Carmine, Maroni hired the reporter to dig up dirt on Thomas Wayne so he wouldn't become mayor. But I think Carmine was lying because Maroni was a mob boss. If he didn't want Thomas Wayne becoming mayor, he would have hired a hitman, not a reporter. Hiring a reporter to fling around Wayne family dirt was about manipulating Thomas Wayne. And who's manipulative? This guy. Here's my theory. Carmine knew that the Wayne family was filthy rich, and the announcement of the Gotham Renewal Fund only anchored the idea in his mind that he needed to have Thomas Wayne under his thumb so that he could control the money, and he didn't yet have the cops and politicians under his authority. So Carmine hired the reporter, knowing it would scare Thomas Wayne and that Wayne would run to him for help. He knew that Thomas wouldn't go to Maroni or the likely corrupt cops because he was already familiar with Carmine. Plus, Thomas might have felt like Carmine would do him a favor since he'd saved Carmine's life years ago. And when Carmine killed the reporter, he not only tied up a loose end that could lead back to him, but he'd also have blackmail on Thomas Wayne. Remember that Carmine said that everybody has dirty laundry. So it's reasonable to believe that he figured he could unearth even more dirt on the other candidates so that Thomas Wayne could still win the election, but now with Carmine calling the shots from behind the scenes. Number 2. Who really killed Bruce's parents? Thomas didn't act as Carmine had predicted. He told Carmine he was going to go to the police and he would confess everything. So Carmine had him killed, knowing that the Gotham Renewal Fund would be enough to make his plans work. Like Alfred said, perhaps it was some random desperate thug who killed Bruce's parents, but they were executed the same night that Thomas promised to go to the police. That's quite a coincidence, isn't it? This is why I believe Carmine ordered the hit. Number 3. Why were Bruce's parents assassinated, but not him? Bruce was likely left alive because in order for any of the crime lords to have access to the funds, they needed an heir to stay alive. Because if all of the Waynes died, where would the Wayne money go? In most storylines, the Wayne family didn't have many extended relatives in Gotham, with rare exceptions like Batman Zero Year, but even then, Bruce's uncle was no saint. It's an interesting detail that Bruce's forefathers were Gotham's founding fathers, yet he has so few relatives there. In this movie, I'm pretty sure Bruce and Alfred only have each other, so if Bruce died, I think Alfred would have inherited the fortune and left Gotham, which the mob bosses didn't want. The heir had to stay alive for the money to stay accessible, and they anticipated that Alfred would keep Bruce in Gotham so that he could take over Wayne Enterprises when he grew up. Number 4. Why did Alfred have the scar? And what did Alfred mean when he mentioned his days in the circus? Early in the film, Alfred is decoding Riddler's message, stating that he's reminiscing about his days in the circus. The circus is another name for British intelligence. Alfred is a retired operative who taught Bruce to fight, and he's extremely intelligent. He likely got his scar from a fight during his career, which leads us to question number 5. Why did the Waynes hire Alfred? The Waynes likely hired Alfred as a bodyguard in addition to a helping hand around the house. The Wayne family was abundantly wealthy, living in a city of poverty, high crime, and desperation. Even though they gave much to charity, they likely had a target on their back every day because people were desperate and envied their wealth. It would make sense that they'd want to hire someone who could protect them. Number 6. Who built the Batcave? This time, I don't think Bruce built it. I think Alfred originally built it as a safe house within their house, either when Bruce was a child or even earlier. If someone rich in the US hired a former Secret Service agent for their protection, it would be understandable that the agent would likely build an underground bunker with a hidden entrance that could hide them in the event their home was ever targeted and their frontline security was breached. If someone started shooting at their home, or barricaded their doors and windows and set the building on fire, or if rioters broke in vast numbers, Thomas, Martha, and Bruce Wayne would be safe in a hidden chamber under their home. Alfred might hide with them, or he might stay out and fight. Number 7. Who created those drops and how? This drug in Gotham is something new, something we've never seen before. Here's my take on the drop's origin, and please remember, it's only my opinion. We're free to disagree. When the Gotham Renewal Fund was being divvied out 20 years ago, Maroni used his slice of the pie to formulate a new drug. He knew that if he created a highly addictive drug that only he could create, he would be rich. He paid someone, or maybe a small team of people, to formulate a new drug that would be administered through the eyes. Maybe he killed the chemist afterward, maybe he didn't, but Maroni would keep the recipe a secret so that only he would be able to sell it, and not just throughout Gotham, but the world. This would make him become one of the wealthiest people alive, if Carmine hadn't stopped him. Number 8. How did Carmine become the king of Gotham's criminal empire and not Salvatore Maroni? While Maroni was creating a new drug to build his empire, Carmine used his share of the Gotham Renewal Fund to launder money and infiltrate the judicial, political, and law enforcement systems. He knew that once he had power over the police, judges, DAs, and the mayor, then he could take over Maroni's drop operation and own that empire as well. Number 9. Who might the Riddler really be? And who might the reporter Edward Elliot really be? I speculate that there's a possibility, and I emphasize possibility because we don't know for sure yet, that Riddler might be Thomas Elliot, aka Hush. There are a lot of clues suggesting this. In the comics, Thomas Elliot, Hush, is related to Edward Elliot. Since Matt Reeves is a fan of Batman comics, he's probably not going to just casually throw out the name Edward Elliot unless there was something much more to it. Look at the photo of Edward Elliot and compare it to the photo of the young Edward Nashton. They have similar features, similar hair, their hair is parted the same way, and they're both wearing glasses. In fact, their glasses look almost identical. If Edward Nashton is Thomas Elliot, he could be the son of Edward Elliot. And if Edward Nashton is an alias, he might have adopted the name Edward as a tribute to his father. This would explain why Riddler was a forensic accountant. As a child, he knew he wanted to grow up to finish his father's work, what he died investigating. As a forensic accountant, he was able to dig up all the dirt in Gotham. This would also explain why Riddler was angry at Bruce Wayne. If you don't count the bombing at the end of the movie, everyone else the Riddler killed was directly involved in corruption, but Bruce Wayne was not. So Riddler stretched the rules and said Bruce must pay for the sins of his father, even though Riddler never punished Maroni's kids. Riddler wanted revenge on Bruce because Thomas's scandal was what got Riddler's father killed. If Riddler is Edward Elliot's son, that would also explain why his anger burned really hot when he talked about the reporter's murder. When the police arrested the Riddler, they found 2 IDs on him with 2 different names, How do we know that either of them are his true name? Obviously, at least one's a lie. Maybe they both are. The police were rushed at the end of the movie and probably didn't have time to do a thorough background check and were basing their intel on what info was readily available. 2 more hush details. The word hush flashes across the screen and Edward Elliot's tie has a checkerboard pattern. And comic fans know that chess was a large theme in the Hush comics. A lot of fans like the original origin story where Thomas Elliot is Bruce's childhood friend, and they don't want to see Thomas Elliot's origin story changed. If Edward Nashton isn't Thomas Elliot, maybe they're really good friends. But I think everyone can agree that there are definite Hush themes here, and that Reeves might bring Hush into a future story. Number 10. Who was that guy on the bench? Is that a young Professor Hugo Strange? He's at Arkham, but he's not dressed as a patient or an orderly. He's dressed like a professor. He doesn't seem disturbed by a woman resisting the orderlies. His beard looks like Hugo Strange's, and he's wearing the same style glasses that Strange wears. He has hair, unlike the usually bald Hugo Strange, but maybe Strange has hair when he's younger. There is a possibility that his appearance is there to hint at a live-action Professor Hugo Strange coming up in a later show or film. Now my unanswered questions. Number 1. Why was there no oversight on the Gotham Renewal Fund? Alfred had to have been the guardian of the estate and fortune while Bruce was a minor, and he's former British intelligence. Surely he would have put oversight on it. Remember that Carmine didn't have the cops and politicians paid for until after he got his hands on the Gotham Renewal Fund. So the best solution I can think of is that the Gotham Renewal Fund was funded through Wayne Enterprises, and there was someone dirty working for the company that covered it up. Probably an accountant. Otherwise, surely Alfred would have discovered the dirty dealings early on. Number 2. How is Alfred not able to solve the mystery of who killed Bruce's parents? He confessed in the hospital scene that he'd spent a lot of time trying to figure out who assassinated Bruce's parents. Granted, he didn't have access to the police records, but as guardian of the estate and with enough money to hire the best lawyers, I think Alfred could have gotten his hands on the court records, especially early on, before Carmine corrupted the police force and the judicial system. Alfred could have dug up a lot of information. Even if the police couldn't trace the weapon, Alfred had a skill set he could have lent to them to help them out, and his training would probably be more advanced than theirs. Alfred isn't infallible. He could certainly make mistakes or miss a crucial detail, and even those who work in intelligence can't solve every crime. But I've read enough about the U.S. Secret Service to respect just how powerful intelligence agencies are and how difficult it would be to outsmart an agent. And I imagine the same is true for the British intelligence. Alfred would probably still have contacts in the British Intelligence Agency who would likewise have contacts with the U.S. Secret Service who could help Alfred out. What do you guys think of all this? Do you agree or disagree? Do you have answers for why there was no oversight on the Gotham Renewal Fund, or how Alfred couldn't find Thomas and Martha Wayne's killer? Let me know in the comments. As always, keep weaving the threads of your stories.